We are MythVision. The 12 tribes of MythVision are here with Professor Andrew Tobolowsky. Did I pronounce it properly?
Yeah, Tobolowsky.
Tobolowsky. I didn't ask you before we hit record, like, how do I properly pronounce your name? Welcome to MythVision.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. I truly appreciate you giving me your time. I hope that we can dig through some of this material, giving people some satisfaction in their understanding of what's going on with the tribes of Israel, the list of the tribes, and maybe as time goes by throughout history, how the reception of becoming Israel is incorporated, like late Second Temple Judaism. We may not have time, and maybe we can preserve this kind of conversation on getting into the medieval ages and, of course, future, where we talk about Native Americans or getting into like how the Mormons are saying, hey, by the way, did you know? Those are fun topics, but I figure we'd go more on the historical route in the past, biblically speaking, and then in the future, we can do more. I want to give a plug. Got to give a plug. I'm really enjoying this book. That's telling you I haven't completed it, which is also why I want to continue, because there's too much going on in this book. The myth of the 12 tribes of Israel. I know it's a little pricey here, but you don't make the prices. So if anybody really wants to blame somebody, blame publishers for the academic presses, if you will, for their cost. But I can't recommend this book enough. I'm a fan of this kind of topic and diving into what's going on in the Bible. Tell us a brief description of your book, because we're really going to be diving into it. What's this book all about?
Sure, yeah. So a lot of my work has dealt with the biblical tradition of the 12 tribes of Israel, which is essentially how the Bible defines Israel, at least the Hebrew Bible, from beginning to end. I got interested in how many other people around the world identify as Israel over the last really 2,500, 3,000 years, generally speaking, through the same tradition. So it's a book about how people from biblical times to the present have used this tradition to describe themselves as Israel, to come up with Israelite histories, and just all the things that this really interesting, complex genealogical tradition can do.
Now, this is from a synagogue. What period is this image from a synagogue?
It's the early first millennium CE. I don't remember exactly which one it came from. This is the first time I've worked with a publisher that has a marketing department, so it was their idea, and I went with it.
That's how I made my thumbnail. I took this image and just made the thumbnail out of it. Get you a copy. So Dr. Tobolowsky is like, you know what? I'm going to come back on this channel because they're actually trying to, learn about what my work is about. And MythVision's all about that. My fans are legit. You did a couple different interviews, or need I say one interview, but the other one is based purely on your work, which is what happened to the 10 lost tribes of Israel on Religion for Breakfast. My buddy, Dr. Andrew Henry, go check out that show when you're done, because it's very well edited, briefly just getting you through what's going on here. And that is based on your work. But also my buddy, Brother Garfield podcast on Scholars 20 for 20. And you were, I think, the 20th, the last of the last.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Well, the last shall be first, right? Anywho, I hope you go check out that interview after you have watched this one, and then also get you some salvation by joining MythVision's Patreon, or just join the tribes of MythVision. I put that down there in the little banner beneath. All right, we're done plugging. I want to get into some content. So the 12 tribes of Israel have always been the case, right? Historically, I'm being sarcastic, there's always been 12 tribes, right? What's the problem with this? What's the issue?
Yeah, there's all kinds of problems. So it's the Hebrew Bible actually has roughly 14 different tribes that it lists at one time or another as part of the 12 tribes of Israel, which includes Levi and Joseph, or Ephraim and Manasseh, who are often depicted as Joseph's two sons. The earliest lists don't always have 12 tribes. The lists and orders of the tribes change a lot. And according to, one of the big things that's happened is that the history that the Bible tells is very long in comparison to the actual history of ancient Israel as we now think of it. So, you got different orientations to did the Exodus happen, that kind of thing. But
Mhm.
really, your history of Israel starts, I don't know, sometime in the 10th century BCE. And even in the Hebrew Bible, already by the 8th century BCE, most of the tribes are not around anymore. So a lot of this history and a lot of this composition came after the heyday of however many tribes there were, and it's looking backwards on a sort of golden age. And that's really where I got started, because it's not that different from what other people after Israel are doing. They're also looking backwards to this period and attaching themselves to it through this tradition.
That was what really blew my mind. So I hope people, like what you just said was a missile. I think that once it enters and it'll explode. In your book, you point out how Judah, I'm cutting to the chase, giving you a tease as we'll spell this out. Judah inserts themselves into the 12 tribe motif, making them like the special son, actually. So, I mean, who wouldn't want to be the special son, especially if your priests are the ones compiling and redacting or
Right.
putting this together? So, Judah is probably, and I want your thoughts on this historically speaking, and then biblically. Maybe you can paint two pictures here.
Yep.
Judah was never probably really in that kind of relationship with Israel. From what I understand historically, and even hints in the Bible, is they were
Right.
always at war with each other. So were they really Israel ever to begin with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are a lot of scholars now who think that the answer might be no. I wouldn't say that it's the majority scholarly opinion yet, but there's a lot of well-regarded scholars who have this view. And when you think about what evidence we have, it becomes clear that it's not that unlikely a prospect. Because again, the actual history of ancient Israel, even in the Hebrew Bible, it tells us that after the reigns of David and Solomon, the kingdom of Israel split into two parts, Israel and Judah. And those two kingdoms didn't get along, like you just said. Then Israel was conquered in 722, and Judah continued until 586. So they have different histories, they have different political situations. So if Israel was ever one people, even according to the Hebrew Bible's vision of this history, that period didn't last very long compared to the period in which they were separated, in which they were conquered at different times, they had different exiles, they had different returns. But when you start to look at it, there really isn't a lot of evidence from early traditions that Judah was part of Israel at that time. So Judges 5 is probably the oldest tribal list there is. It doesn't include the tribes that are most often associated with Judah. It doesn't have Judah itself. It doesn't have Levi. It doesn't have Simeon. I've written other articles on this topic where if you look at the book of Judges, which is about the period right before the kingdoms, most of the judges that are from Israel, it gives them a name of a tribe. So, we know that Samson is a Danite. We know that Gideon is a Manassite, and so on and so forth. The Judahite judges tend not to be named according to their tribe. There's Ibzan, the Bethlehemite. There's Othniel, the son of Caleb. So there's a lot of different evidence in different parts of the Bible that suggests that however Judahites were identifying themselves before the period when we get a lot of biblical text written is probably different from how the Israelites were. And if you just do a straightforward reading of the evidence, you look at something like Judges 5, which doesn't have these tribes, and then you look at the heyday of when everybody agrees the most 12 tribe lists were written, it's much later on. It just looks like the Judahites expanded whatever this original Israelite tradition was so that it included them, the tribe of Judah, the tribes of Simeon and Levi. And it becomes this vision of all Israel that may not have actually existed.